My grandmother lied about my mom's death for 15 years to keep me from finding out she was still alive. I was 8 when Dad sat me down and explained that Mom had died in a car accident. He showed me the newspaper clipping, the funeral program, even took me to visit her grave every Mother's Day. Grandmother would hold my hand at the cemetery, tears streaming down her face as she placed flowers on the headstone. "She loved you more than anything," Grandmother would whisper. "She'd want you to be strong." For 15 years, I believed it. I grieved her. I talked to her picture every night. I inherited her jewelry when I turned 18, a box of treasures Grandmother had saved for me. The lie unraveled completely by accident. Last month, I was cleaning out Grandmother's attic after she moved to assisted living. Buried behind Christmas decorations, I found a shoebox full of letters. The return address made my hands shake. Mom's full name and an address in Oregon. The postmark was from 3 weeks ago. My dead mother had been writing letters. With trembling fingers, I opened the most recent one. "Dear Mom, I know you'll never respond, but I have to keep trying. Violet turns 23 next month. Does she still love art? Does she remember the stories I used to tell her? I've written her so many letters over the years, but you return them all unopened. Please just tell me she's okay. Tell me she's happy. I think about her every single day." I sat there on the dusty attic floor, reading 15 years of unopened letters. Birthday cards, Christmas presents, school photos she'd somehow obtained, a wedding invitation to a ceremony that never happened because she thought I hated her. Each letter begged Grandmother to let her see me. Each one was more desperate than the last. The final letter was the worst. "I'm getting married next month to a wonderful man who understands my past. We want children, but I can't move forward without knowing if Violet is alive and well. This is my last letter. If you don't respond, I'll assume she wants nothing to do with me and I'll stop trying." That's when I found the thick manila envelope hidden at the bottom. Inside were copies of every letter I'd never received. Birthday cards, graduation congratulations, care packages for college, all returned to sender by Grandmother. I drove straight to the assisted living facility. Grandmother was in her garden, tending roses like she hadn't destroyed my entire life. "Why?" I asked, dropping the shoebox at her feet. Her face went white. For a moment, she looked exactly like the frail old woman she was, not the manipulator I'd just discovered. "She left you," Grandmother said finally. "She chose drugs over her own daughter." These letters don't sound like someone who chose drugs. Grandmother's eyes hardened. "You don't understand what she put this family through." "Then explain it." She was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Your father was cheating. Your mother found out and threatened to take you away from us. We couldn't let that happen." The words hit me like a physical blow. "So you convinced me she was dead? We convinced her you were better off without her." I stared at this woman who'd raised me, who'd comforted me through nightmares about losing my mother, who'd helped me place flowers on a fake grave for 15 years. "Where is she?" Grandmother looked up with eyes full of regret. "Portland." "But Violet, you have to understand." I was already walking away. That night, I booked a flight to Oregon. I found her address through the letters. For the first time in 15 years, I was going to see my mother. But what I discovered when I got there changed everything I thought I knew about my family. The address led me to a modest blue house in a quiet neighborhood. Children's toys scattered the front yard. Wind chimes hung from the porch, playing the same melody Mom used to hum when she tucked me in. I sat in my rental car for 20 minutes, working up the courage to knock. Through the front window, I could see her. She was older, her hair shorter, laugh lines around her eyes. She was helping a little boy with homework at the kitchen table. The scene looked so normal, so peaceful. Everything I'd been told was a lie. When I finally knocked, the man who answered was tall with kind eyes, the husband she'd mentioned in her letters. "Can I help you?" he asked. Before I could answer, I heard her voice from inside. "Who is it, honey?" "I'm looking for my mother," I said, my voice barely steady. His eyes widened with understanding. "Violet?" She appeared behind him, and the years collapsed. She looked exactly like I remembered, just older. Her hand flew to her mouth, and she made a sound like she'd been punched. "Baby?" she whispered. I started crying immediately. 15 years of grief and anger and confusion poured out of me in that doorway. She pulled me into her arms, and I was 8 years old again, safe and loved. "I thought you hated me," she sobbed. "I thought you never wanted to see me again. I thought you were dead." I managed through my tears. Her husband, David, I learned later, ushered us inside. The little boy at the table turned out to be my half-brother, Leo, who was 7. He looked just like I did at that age. "You're my sister?" he asked, not understanding the magnitude of what was happening. Mom couldn't let go of my hand as she explained everything. After she discovered Dad's affair, she'd demanded a divorce and full custody. That's when Dad and Grandmother conspired against her. They'd hired a private investigator to dig up dirt from her past, a brief struggle with prescription painkillers after a surgery when I was 6. "It was 3 months, she said. "I went to rehab, got clean, never touched another pill, but they used it to paint me as an unfit mother." The family court battle was vicious. Dad had money and connections. Mom had a public defender. Grandmother testified that Mom was unstable and dangerous. They had witnesses testify about things that never happened. Mom continued, her voice getting stronger as she told me the truth. "Your father's secretary claimed she'd seen me drinking before picking you up from school. His golf partner said I'd called him asking for drug connections. All lies, but convincing ones. Why didn't you fight harder?" I tried. For 8 months, I fought. But every court appearance, every deposition, they'd bring up new accusations. They said I'd been prostituting myself to pay for drugs, that I'd left you alone overnight while I was getting high. None of it was true, but the mud was sticking. She showed me the court documents she'd kept all these years, page after page of character assassination, carefully orchestrated to destroy any credibility she had. The breaking point came when they threatened to put you in foster care, she said. They claimed that if the court couldn't trust me, and if your father was proven unfit due to his work schedule, you'd become a ward of the state while they investigated both of us. They made me choose, Mom said, her voice breaking. Give up all rights to you, or they'd drag the case out for years, traumatize you with custody battles, and likely win anyway because of my medical history. Worse, you might end up in the system, so you signed away your rights? They told me it was temporary, that once things settled down, we could revisit it. But they lied about that too. That's when she showed me the real kicker, a document I'd never seen before. A restraining order Dad had filed against her, claiming she was stalking me and making threats against the family. I tried to see you at school once, she said, just to make sure you were okay. The principal called the police. Your father had told them I was dangerous. She'd spent years trying to contact me through lawyers, only to be told I didn't want to see her. When she tried to call, Dad said I was too upset to talk. When she showed up at school, Grandmother convinced her I was scared of her. They orchestrated the fake funeral to make it final, she said. Your father showed me pictures of you crying at my grave, said you were finally getting closure and I needed to let you heal. But you kept writing. I couldn't stop hoping. Every birthday, every Christmas, every major holiday, I'd send letters to Grandmother begging for news. She returned them all unopened. But there was more to the story. Mom had moved to Oregon not just to escape, but because Dad's family had connections everywhere in our home state. They'd made sure she couldn't get decent work, couldn't find an apartment, couldn't even get a library card without someone recognizing her name and treating her like a criminal. Your Uncle Pete called every job I applied for, she said. Told them I was a drug addict who abandoned her child. It took me 3 years to realize I had to leave the state entirely. Uncle Pete, Dad's brother, who'd always been my favorite relative. The man who taught me to ride a bike, who never missed a birthday, who'd comforted me at Mom's funeral. Pete knew the truth. They all knew. Your Aunt Linda, your cousins, even your father's parents before they passed. It was a family conspiracy. The betrayal ran deeper than I'd imagined. Every family gathering, every holiday dinner, every time someone asked about Mom and they'd all get that sad, sympathetic look, they knew she was alive. They knew I was grieving a lie. That's when she showed me her room. It was a shrine to me. Photos of me from elementary school through college. Somehow she'd gotten copies. My school awards, art projects she'd persuaded teachers to share, newspaper clippings when I made Dean's List. She'd been following my entire life from a distance. But it wasn't just photos. She'd kept everything. Report cards Mrs. Thompson had smuggled to her. Programs from school plays she'd never been allowed to attend. Even a napkin from my Sweet 16 party. Apparently, the caterer's daughter had been in my class and thought Mom deserved to know I was okay. How did you get all this? I asked. Your second grade teacher, Mrs. Thompson. She never believed I was as bad as your family claimed. She'd send me updates, photos from class parties. She's the one who told me you were studying art in college. Mrs. Thompson. I remembered her. The teacher who always asked about my mom, who seemed sad when I said she was dead. She knew. She suspected something was wrong when you suddenly stopped talking about me and started saying I was dead. But she couldn't prove anything. What about the other teachers? Some helped when they could. Your high school art teacher, Ms. Rodriguez. She sent me photos of your paintings, said you had real talent, just like your mother. She didn't know I was alive, but she knew something wasn't right about the story she'd been told. The network of people who'd helped without knowing they were helping was staggering. The school nurse who'd mentioned my menstrual cycles to Mom through Mrs. Thompson, so she'd know I was healthy. The librarian who'd noted what books I checked out. Even the custodian who'd told Mrs. Thompson when I seemed sad or upset. There were so many people who cared about you, Mom said. They just didn't know how to help. David brought us tea and quietly explained that he'd been encouraging Mom to hire a private investigator to find me. She was afraid you'd reject her, he said. But I told her she had to try. We were supposed to start the search next month, Mom said. I'd given up on Grandmother responding, but I couldn't give up on you. David had his own story. His first wife had died of cancer when Leo was 3, and he'd met Mom at a grief counseling group 2 years later. She talked about you constantly, he said with a sad smile. For the first year I knew her, I thought you were dead too. It wasn't until we got serious that she told me the truth. What did you think when you found out? I asked him. I was furious, he said. I have a daughter too, from my first marriage, and I couldn't imagine anyone keeping her from me. I wanted to drive to your state immediately and confront your father. Why didn't you? Because your mother was terrified it would backfire, that your family would convince you she was trying to disrupt your life, or worse, that they'd move you somewhere she'd never find you again. We talked until dawn. She told me about her life, how she'd moved to Oregon to start over, become a social worker helping kids in foster care, met David at a grief counseling group after his first wife died of cancer. I wanted to help children who felt as lost as I did, she said. But her work had a darker motivation too. She'd specialized in cases where children were separated from fit parents due to false allegations or family manipulation. I've reunited 17 families over the years, she said. Every time I helped a child find their way back to a parent who loved them, I imagined someone doing the same for you and me. Leo had been David's son from his first marriage. Mom had raised him since he was 3 after David's first wife died. He knows about you, she said. I've told him stories about his big sister who lived far away. You talked about me? Every day. David says I talk about you too much. She smiled through fresh tears. He's not wrong. Leo had his own questions. At 7, he couldn't understand why his sister had been gone so long, but he was excited to finally meet me. I saved you this, he said, running to his room and returning with a drawing he'd made. It was a stick figure family. Him, Mom, David, and a taller girl labeled Violet. I drew you bigger because Mom said you're grown up, he explained. That's when I realized the full scope of what had been stolen from us. Not just 15 years together, But Leo's childhood with his real sister, graduations and birthdays and holidays, the chance to grieve together when my grandfather died last year, I'd cried alone while she wasn't even told he'd passed. Grandfather's funeral, I said suddenly. You didn't know? Mom's face crumpled. He died? When? Last December, cancer. It was quick. She sobbed then. Not just for the loss, but for missing the chance to say goodbye to the man who'd raised her. He loved you, I said. Even after everything, he'd ask about you sometimes. I think he knew something wasn't right. But grandmother always changed the subject. Did he suffer? No, he went peacefully. Dad said his last words were about hoping you were happy, wherever you were. We held each other while she grieved the father she'd lost twice. Once when she was forced to leave, and again when he died without knowing the truth. That afternoon, she took me to places she'd lived when I was little, places I barely remembered but that flooded back as we walked through them. The park where she'd taught me to swing, the ice cream shop where we'd go for special treats, the library where she'd read to me every Saturday morning. I come here sometimes, she admitted as we stood outside our old apartment building, just to remember when we were together. The building manager recognized her, Mrs. Chen, an elderly woman who'd always liked Mom. Is this little Violet? She asked, beaming. My goodness, you're beautiful. Your mother used to bring your picture to show me how you'd grown. She did? Every year on your birthday. She'd cry and tell me stories about what you must be doing, what you must look like. I always wondered why you never visited. Another person who'd known the truth but hadn't been able to help. I need to call Dad, I said that evening. Mom's face hardened. Violet, you should know. He remarried when you were 12. They had 2 kids. Boys. He replaced us both. I'm so sorry, baby. I never wanted this for you. The stepmother had seemed nice enough when I was growing up, but now I wondered what she knew. Had Dad told her the truth about Mom? Did she know she was helping raise a daughter stolen from her mother? I called Dad from Mom's kitchen, putting it on speaker so she could hear. Violet? It's early. Is everything okay? I'm in Oregon, I said, with Mom. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Sweetheart, your mother is alive. I know. I found the letters. Another pause. You don't understand the whole story. Then tell me. But instead of explanations, he started making excuses. The custody battle had been expensive. I was better off with stability. Mom was unstable back then. They were protecting me. You let me grieve a living person for 15 years. We thought it was best. You thought it was convenient. Mom squeezed my hand, tears streaming down her face as she listened to him scramble for justifications. The affair was a mistake, he said. I was young and stupid, but your mother was going to destroy our family. You destroyed our family. I cut him off. You were the one cheating. You were the one who chose to lie instead of face the consequences. She was going to take you away from me. Because that's what happens when you betray your wife. You don't get to have both the affair and the family. I want to see you, Dad said finally. Come home and we'll talk. I am home, I said, looking around Mom's kitchen. I hung up. The phone rang immediately. Then again. Dad called 6 more times before I turned it off. That night, Mom showed me the legal documents she'd kept. Not just the custody papers, but everything. The restraining order. The psychological evaluation they'd forced her to undergo. The drug test she'd passed, but that somehow got lost by the court. They had me evaluated by 3 different psychologists, she said. The first 2 said I was a fit mother. The third was a friend of your father's lawyer. The psychological evaluation from Dad's expert was devastating. It painted Mom as manipulative, unstable, and potentially dangerous to me. It recommended supervised visitation at best, full separation at worst. I kept copies of everything, she said. Even though my lawyer said it was over, I knew someday you might want to know the truth. The most painful document was her own handwritten statement, 12 pages of her side of the story that the court had refused to consider. In it, she detailed Dad's affair, his drinking, his increasingly controlling behavior. She documented dates, times, witnesses. She'd built a compelling case that the judge had ignored. Judge Morrison, I read from the file. I remember him. He and Dad played golf together. That's when I knew I'd lost, Mom said, when I saw them laughing together in the courthouse hallway. But the truly sickening part was what came after. The court documents showed that immediately after Mom signed away her rights, Dad had petitioned to seal the case. Everything we'd just read, the lies, the manipulation, the corruption, was supposed to be buried forever. He didn't want you to ever find out, Mom said, even when you became an adult. The next morning, I called Mrs. Thompson. She was retired now, but remembered me immediately. Violet, how are you, sweetheart? I found my mom, I said. The silence on her end was deafening. Oh, honey, she finally whispered. I'm so sorry. I tried to help, but I didn't know how. You did help, more than you know. She told me her side of the story, how she'd noticed the change in me after Mom died, how I'd gone from a bright, confident child to a sad, withdrawn one almost overnight. You used to talk about your mother constantly, she said. She was your whole world. Then suddenly you wouldn't mention her at all. When I asked, you'd just say she was dead and change the subject. Why didn't you report it? I tried. I called the school counselor, suggested maybe you needed help processing your grief, but your grandmother came in for a meeting and explained that you were seeing a therapist, that the family was handling it. There was no therapist? I know that now. But at the time, I had no reason to doubt her. She seemed genuinely concerned about you. Mrs. Thompson had spent years wondering if she'd failed me. She'd sent those updates to Mom not knowing if they helped, but hoping they meant something to someone who cared about me. Your mother sent me a Christmas card every year, she said, just to thank me for the photos. She never asked for more than I was comfortable giving, never put me in a position where I'd have to lie. She was always respectful. What did you think happened to her? Honestly, I thought your father had her killed. The casual way she said it shocked me. That sounds extreme, I said. Does it? A woman threatens to expose a man's affair and take his child. She has a history of prescription drug use that makes her vulnerable to accusations. She disappears completely, and suddenly there's a convenient car accident with a body that's never found. The body was found. I saw the newspaper clipping. Different woman. I looked it up years later when the internet made it easier. The woman who died in that accident was named Patricia Morrison. Married, no children. Nothing like your mother's situation. Even my second-grade teacher had put together a better investigation than I had. That afternoon, Mom showed me the cemetery where I'd been visiting my grave. The headstone was real. They'd actually purchased a plot and stone with her name on it. The newspaper clipping? I asked. They used a real accident from the same day. Different woman, similar age. Your grandmother was always good with details. Is anyone buried here? No, it's an empty plot. We stood there looking at her fake grave, and I thought about all the times I'd cried there, begging her spirit to send me signs she was okay. I'm so angry, I told her. Good, she said. You should be. But she had her own anger to work through. 15 years of believing I hated her. 15 years of wondering if I was safe, if I was happy, if I even remembered her. Do you know what the worst part was? She asked as we drove back to her house. Tell me, your 16th birthday. I spent the whole day imagining you getting your driver's license, going on dates, becoming the woman I'd never get to meet. That night, I had a breakdown. David found me on the bathroom floor, sobbing uncontrollably. What happened? He held me while I cried, and then he said something that probably saved my life. He said, she's out there loving the memory of you, even if she thinks you're gone. That love doesn't disappear. Someday she'll understand. I thought about 16-year-old me, crying myself to sleep because I missed my dead mother, neither of us knowing the other was alive and grieving the same loss. I stayed in Oregon for 2 weeks. I met Mom's friends, who'd heard about me for years. Her best friend, Carmen, hugged me like she'd known me my whole life. Your mom has your baby pictures on her phone, Carmen said. She shows them to everyone. We all feel like we watched you grow up. I helped Leo with homework and learned he was obsessed with dinosaurs, just like I'd been at his age. I watched Mom and David together. They were genuinely happy, the kind of contentment I'd never seen in my father's house. David had his own way of making me feel welcome. He'd clear out his home office so I could have a quiet place to process everything. He'd cook my favorite foods. Somehow Mom had told him things I liked that I'd forgotten telling her when I was little. She never stopped being your mother, he said one evening as we cleaned dishes together. Even when she couldn't be with you, she never stopped loving you like one. I asked him about the years before I'd found them. She'd have good days and bad days, he said. Good days, she'd be hopeful. She'd talk about what she'd say when she saw you again, what she'd want to know about your life. Bad days, she'd be convinced you were better off without her. What changed? Leo. When I adopted him, watching her become his mom, she was so natural at it, so good. It made me realize how much had been stolen from both of you. The night before I was supposed to fly back, I made a decision. I want to stay. I told Mom, honey, you have a life. I have a job. That's not the same thing. I want to get to know you. And Leo, I want to be part of this family. She cried and held me like she was afraid I'd disappear again. I called my boss and quit, found a sublet in Portland, started working at a local art gallery while figuring out my next move. But staying meant confronting the rest of my family. Dad called constantly, demanding I come home. Grandmother called crying, begging me to visit. I ignored them both. Then Uncle Pete called. Your father told me what happened, he said. I think you're making a mistake. You knew she was alive. Silence. Pete, you knew. You all knew. It was complicated. It was criminal. You helped them destroy evidence, falsify documents, commit fraud. We were protecting you. From what? From having a mother who loved me? He tried to justify it for 20 minutes. How Mom was unstable. How the family was just trying to do what was best. How I didn't understand the full situation. I understand that you're all liars, I said, and hung up. Aunt Linda tried next, then my cousins. Each call was the same, a mix of defensiveness and attempted manipulation. They'd minimized Mom's pain, justified their deception, and tried to convince me I was throwing away my real family for a fantasy. The worst was my cousin Beth, who I'd been close to growing up. She abandoned you, Violet, Beth said. Maybe not physically, but emotionally. A real mother would have fought harder. She did fight. Your family destroyed the evidence. You're being dramatic. You had a good childhood. You were loved and cared for, built on a lie. Sometimes lies protect people. Sometimes lies protect liars. After I hung up, I felt hollow. These people had been my world for 15 years. They'd celebrated my birthdays, attended my graduations, comforted me when I was sad, and all of it had been built on the foundation of keeping me from my mother. Then Dad showed up in Oregon. I was having coffee with Mom when I saw him through the window, standing on her front porch. She went rigid. You don't have to see him, she said. Yes, I do. He looked older, grayer. When Mom opened the door, he stared at her like he was seeing a ghost. You look good, he said quietly. What do you want? Mom asked. To talk to my daughter. I'm listening, I said from behind Mom. We sat in the living room, the same room where I'd learned the truth 2 weeks earlier. Dad looked around at the photos of me covering the walls, the evidence of 15 years of love from a distance. I never meant for it to go this far, he said. How far did you mean for it to go? I asked. He couldn't answer that. I was young and stupid. I made mistakes. You destroyed our family because you couldn't keep it in your pants. Mom flinched but didn't defend him. She was going to take you away from me, Dad said, because you were cheating on her. I know I hurt your mother, but I couldn't lose you too. So you made sure she lost me instead. That's when he broke down. Not the manipulative tears I'd seen him use when he wanted something, but real, ugly sobbing. I regret it every day, he gasped. Especially after I met your stepmother. Watching her with our boys, seeing what a real mother looks like, I realized what I'd taken from you. And from her, I said, gesturing to Mom. I tried to find her when you turned 18, to tell her you were an adult and could make your own choices. But she'd changed her name, moved away. I thought she was gone forever. She was right here, writing letters, begging to see me. He looked at Mom with something that might have been remorse. I never saw the letters. Mom handled all that. Don't blame grandmother, I said. You could have stopped this any time. You could have told me the truth when I turned 18, when I graduated college, when I got engaged last year. You were engaged? Mom asked, surprised. It didn't work out. Turns out I have trust issues. I looked pointedly at Dad. I wanted to tell you, Dad said, but I was afraid you'd hate me. I do hate you, I said simply, but I would have hated you less if you told me the truth. We sat in silence. Finally, Dad asked the question I'd been dreading. Are you coming home? I am home. He nodded like he'd expected that answer. What about school? Your job? Your friends? I can finish school anywhere. I'll make new friends. As for work, I looked at Mom. I'm thinking about social work. Mom smiled, and I knew she understood. I wanted to help other kids who'd been lied to, manipulated, stolen from their families. What about your stepmother and the boys? They love you. For the first time, I felt a pang of guilt. My half-brothers were innocent in this. They were 8 and 10, and they adored their big sister. I'll maintain a relationship with them, I said, but not through you. Dad left that evening. He hugged me goodbye, and for the first time, it felt like he was saying goodbye forever. I love you, he said. I know, I replied, but love isn't enough when it comes with lies. After he left, Mom and I talked about what came next. I don't want you to give up your whole life for me, she said. I'm not giving it up. I'm taking it back. 6 months later, I enrolled in Portland State's social work program. Mom and I see each other almost every day. Leo calls me his real sister now, not his half-sister. David treats me like I've always been part of the family, but integrating into their life wasn't seamless. There were awkward moments, inside jokes I didn't understand, family traditions I hadn't been part of, memories that didn't include me. Sometimes I felt like an intruder in their established dynamic. It's going to take time, Mom said, during one particularly difficult dinner when I'd felt left out of a conversation about Leo's early childhood. We have to learn how to be a family together. She was right. We had to figure out how to navigate holidays, how to handle disagreements, how to balance my relationship with her against her relationship with David and Leo. There were also practical issues. I had to transfer my credits, find new doctors, establish residency. I had to learn to drive in a new city, figure out the public transportation, find grocery stores and banks, and all the mundane aspects of building a life somewhere new. But the hardest part was dealing with my own trauma. 15 years of believing my mother was dead doesn't just disappear because you find out it's not true. I had night terrors for months. Dreams where I'd wake up and she'd be gone again, where I'd discover this was all an elaborate hallucination. You need therapy, Mom said gently after I had a panic attack in the grocery store because I'd lost sight of her for 30 seconds. I don't trust therapists, I said. What if they're working with Dad's family too? She found me a therapist who specialized in family reunification after parental alienation. Dr. Martinez understood immediately what I was dealing with. Your grief was real, she told me. Even though your mother wasn't actually dead, you experienced a real loss. The relationship you had with her was killed, even if she wasn't. Therapy helped me understand that I was grieving multiple losses. The mother I'd lost at 8, the 15 years we'd missed together, the family I'd thought I had but never really existed. It also helped me work through my anger, which was enormous and consuming. I was angry at Dad for starting the lie, at grandmother for maintaining it, at Uncle Pete and Aunt Linda for supporting it, at myself for never questioning it. Anger is appropriate here, Dr. Martinez said. The question is what you want to do with it. Dad sends money for school, which I accept. He's trying to make amends the only way he knows how. His new wife sent a card apologizing for the family's actions. Apparently, she'd figured out the truth years ago and had been pushing him to find Mom. The stepmother, Angela, called me directly one day. I want you to know I never knew the full story, she said. Your father told me your mother had abandoned you, that she was unstable and dangerous. I believed him because I loved him and trusted him. When did you figure out he was lying? When Tyler started asking about his sister's mother. Your father got so defensive, so evasive that I started digging. I found some of the court documents in his office. Why didn't you say anything? I tried. I told him he needed to tell you the truth, but he was terrified you'd cut him off completely. I did anyway. I know. And honestly, I think that's what it took for him to realize how badly he'd screwed up. She asked if I'd be willing to maintain a relationship with my half-brothers. And I said yes. They were innocent victims in this too. The boys, Tyler and Mason, didn't understand why I'd moved away or why I was suddenly talking about a mother they'd never heard of. Angela explained it as gently as she could, that there had been a misunderstanding about their sister's mom, and now we were fixing it. Is she nice? Tyler asked during a video call. Very nice, I said. You'd like her. Can we meet her? I looked at Mom, who nodded. Maybe someday. Grandmother passed away last month. She'd been in declining health since I discovered the letters. In her final days, she asked to see me. I went, but I didn't forgive her. I thought I was protecting you, she whispered from her hospital bed. You were protecting yourself, I replied, from facing what your son had done. I never meant for it to last so long. When? When did you decide 15 years was too long? She couldn't answer. She died holding the photo of Mom and me from my 8th birthday, the last picture taken before their lie began. At her funeral, I stood between my two families. Dad's side on one side, pretending to grieve for a woman who destroyed lives to protect her son, and Mom on the other side, attending to support me despite everything grandmother had done to her. The pastor talked about grandmother's devotion to family, her sacrifice for her loved ones. I wanted to scream that her devotion had been selective. Her sacrifices had been other people's lives. After the service, several family members approached Mom, the first time they'd seen her in 15 years. "You look well," Aunt Linda said stiffly. "No thanks to you," Mom replied. Uncle Pete tried to shake her hand. She ignored him. "I hope you can forgive us someday," he said. "I hope you can live with yourselves," she replied. I stood next to the fake grave they'd made for my mother and thought about all the ways the truth gets buried. How easy it is to convince someone that love looks like lies, that protection requires destruction. Dad stood on the other side of the cemetery, watching us, but not approaching. He'd lost the right to be part of this moment. After everyone left, Mom and I stood alone at grandmother's actual grave. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Empty," I said. "She took so much from us, and now she's gone and we'll never get answers to half our questions." "What questions?" "Like whether she ever regretted it. Whether she ever thought about telling me the truth. Whether she understood what she'd done to you. Does it matter?" I thought about that. No, I guess not. She made her choices. And now we get to make ours. 3 months after grandmother's death, I got a call that changed everything again. It was from a lawyer representing her estate. "Ms. Chen, I'm calling about your grandmother's will. She left you something that I think you need to see." The law office was in my hometown, so Mom and I drove there together. My first time back since I discovered the truth. Driving through familiar streets felt surreal. Everything looked smaller, shabbier than I remembered. The lawyer, Mr. Hughes, was clearly uncomfortable. "Your grandmother left detailed instructions about when to give you this," he said, handing me a thick envelope. "She specified it should only be given to you after her death, and only if you had already discovered the truth about your mother. She knew I'd found out. She received a report from the assisted living facility about your visit after you found the letters. She'd been expecting this for years." Inside the envelope was a letter in grandmother's handwriting. "Violet, if you're reading this, then you know what we did. I won't insult you by trying to justify it, but I want you to understand why. Your father wasn't just having an affair, he was embezzling money from his company to pay for it. When your mother found out, she didn't just threaten to leave him, she threatened to turn him into the police. We couldn't let him go to prison. You were 8 years old. You needed at least one parent. So we made a choice. We convinced your mother that if she disappeared quietly, we wouldn't press charges for her prescription drug use. If she tried to take you or expose your father, we'd have her arrested and you'd end up in foster care while she went to jail. She agreed to leave because she thought she was protecting you. But then your father's company started investigating the missing money anyway. He was going to be caught regardless. Rather than admit we'd destroyed your family for nothing, we doubled down. We told you she was dead. We made it permanent. Every year that passed made it harder to tell the truth. How do you explain to a child that you lied about her mother being dead? How do you admit that level of betrayal? So we kept lying and lying until the lies became the truth. I know you hate me. You should. But know that I loved you, even as I was hurting you. Everything I did was because I couldn't bear to see you suffer. I was wrong. I see that now. I made you suffer anyway. The money I'm leaving you, it's not enough to make up for what I took, but it's what your mother should have received in the divorce. Use it to build the life you should have had with her. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Love, grandmother." There was more. Bank statements showing Dad had stolen nearly $200,000 from his company, police reports I'd never seen, and a confession letter from Dad, written but never sent, admitting to the embezzlement and the frame-up of Mom. "Your grandmother kept evidence of everything," Mr. Hughes said. "I think she always knew this day would come. The inheritance was substantial, enough to pay for my remaining education and help Mom and David buy a bigger house so Leo and I could each have our own rooms. But more than the money, the letter gave me something I hadn't expected: closure. For 15 years, I'd wondered what I'd done wrong, why my mother had left me. Learning that she'd actually sacrificed herself to protect me transformed everything. She didn't abandon you," Mom said as we read the letter together in the lawyer's parking lot. "She saved you." That evening, I called Dad. "I know about the embezzlement," I said without preamble. Silence. "You let Mom take the blame for your crimes. Violet, she could have turned you in. She could have sent you to prison and kept me. Instead, she gave up everything to protect me from having a father in jail." "I know. Do you? Do you really understand what she sacrificed?" "Yes." "Then why didn't you ever try to make it right?" More silence. "Because you're a coward," I answered for him. "Because admitting the truth would have meant facing the consequences of your actions." I was afraid. She was afraid too. She was afraid I'd grow up without a father, so she gave up being my mother. I hung up and never spoke to him again. 6 months later, I started working at the state's Child Services Department. My first case was a little girl whose father claimed her mother had abandoned them. The mother's family insisted she'd died in an accident. I looked at that file and thought about 15 years of stolen letters. "What does your instinct tell you?" my supervisor asked. "Someone's lying," I said. "Then let's find out who." It took 3 weeks, but we uncovered the truth. The mother hadn't died or abandoned her daughter. She'd been in a coma for 2 years after a car accident, and the father had told the child she was dead rather than let her see her mother in a hospital bed. When we reunited them, the little girl, only 6 years old, looked at her mother and said, "I knew you weren't really gone. I could feel you." Some lies are too big to bury forever. Eventually, the truth finds its way home. Mom and I are planning a trip to visit the graves of her parents. My grandparents I barely remember. We're going to tell them what happened and that we found each other again. "Do you think they'd be proud of us?" she asked. "I think they'd be proud of you," I said, "for never giving up." Last week, Leo asked if he could change his last name to match mine and Mom's. "I want people to know we're really family," he said. David was supportive. Family isn't about names, he said. But if it matters to Leo, it matters to me. So we're all going to be the same family, officially. It took 23 years, but I'm finally getting my mother back. And she's finally getting her daughter.